All right, so this is highway safety and vehicle extrication. We'll talk about when you get on scene, how to put a large fire truck or other emergency apparatus in a place where it blocks oncoming traffic so you get a safe work zone. We'll talk about other hazards on highway rescue scenes. We'll talk briefly about vehicle stabilization and some extrication. So we do get plenty of calls on highways, and these are often where we find some of our most injured trauma patients. When we're dealing with interstates, we want to minimize congestion, and so we're going to minimize the number of excessive units on scene. And when we're on scene, try and park single file so we don't make excessive congestion there. If their vehicle is in the roadway at all, we're going to block the lane that vehicle is in. If the vehicle's off the edge of the road, then we're typically going to take up any shoulder that's there and possibly half of the lane too. So you want to position your largest apparatus, preferably like a rural fire truck or a city engine, in front of the scene as far as traffic goes, with the front wheels rotated away from the incident, and that protects the scene just in case there's an unobservant driver that wrecks into the back of that fire truck. The fire truck won't then turn into the scene. So this is what that looks like on a larger highway here. And here's on a smaller 2-lane highway where the vehicle involved actually probably isn't even in this picture here, but that big fire truck there is blocking the scene so that people can work safely, and then the ambulance can leave. You don't want to use your ambulance as a blocking apparatus because we need to be working in the back of that thing, loading patient and stuff, and so it wouldn't do to have us get run into in the back. And then the ambulance is going to be one of the first units to clear the scene often, and so then the scene wouldn't be protected after that as well. You want to leave some space immediately next to the crash, especially if extrication is involved. Some extrication tools are run from the extrication rig itself, and so having that close is important. Other ambulances and command vehicles can be downstream from the crash, or perhaps upstream of fairways if there's like a blind corner or a hill or something, so that oncoming traffic gets a little more warning to stop. In general, we want to exit the vehicle onto the shoulder or into the safe zone and not out into traffic. Sometimes, especially for the driver of an ambulance, the only way to exit is on the other side, though. So just got to be alert. If you're the first arriving unit there, you need to place some warning flares, or we have on some apparatus warning exit and ahead signs. But you want to put something to warn people that there's an accident ahead and perhaps an uncontrolled scene there. For night incidents, it's best to shut off the white flashing lights and headlights on emergency vehicles, as those make it harder to work on the scene. Think about scene safety, think about fire emergencies, issues with that, and then if there's any patient entrapment, make sure that we have a rescue unit responding. So let's talk a little bit about vehicle extrication. So vehicle extrication is removing parts of the car away from the patient after they become entrapped during an accident. So the general phases, you prepare for the rescue on the way out to the call, get there, size up the scene, manage any hazards that are there. So like airbags, fluids leaking, that kind of thing. We stabilize the vehicle before anybody gets into it if there's any chance that that vehicle is going to move or roll. Then hopefully we can gain access to the patient, and then get an EMT in there in appropriate PPE and do a primary patient assessment and trauma exam. The rescue crew will work at disentangling the patient, so cutting parts of the car or moving parts of the car away from the patient where they're being trapped. And then we'll use whatever spinal mobilization device is appropriate, remove the patient from the vehicle, and then continue assessment, care, and transport while the rescue crew is packing everything up and terminating the rescue. So on any highway scene, we need to have one of these Class 3 vests on, or our newer ambulance jackets meet this Class 3 standard. But we need high visibility as far as some kind of green or bright orange color, and then a certain amount of reflective material as well. Whenever you're working around extrication tools, you should have helmets, eye protection, and then hand protection, and be wearing at least long sleeve shirt and pants with that are made of some kind of cotton or fire resistant material. Again, we should place flares for traffic control. On the ambulances, we have both the Barney kind of flares and LED flares. If you have the choice, the LED flare is obviously a little safer if there's any kind of fire danger. We got to watch out for airbags in vehicles that have been involved in accidents. So airbags now are smart enough to not go off if they're not going to help the patient if the crash wasn't in that direction. So if it's a side impact crash, then the front airbags may or may not go off. And if they don't go off, we worry that they will as we're in there working on the patient. So they come out fast enough that they can seriously injure you, the responder. So this is a little video here about a
They were injured when the car's airbags unexpectedly
firefighter
exploded.
getting hit by an airbag.
Firefighters Jim Collar and Tom Trimbach were trying to remove two trapped people from a wrecked 19...
So in general, the rule is nickel dime quarter, or you want to stay at least 5 inches from any side curtain airbags or knee airbags. There's airbags everywhere in vehicles now. At least 10 inches away from a steering wheel airbag, and then 20 to 25 inches away from passenger airbags, because those inflate the largest. Everywhere there's an airbag in a vehicle, it should be marked as SRS airbag. Other issues we have to deal with in vehicles, especially now with more hybrid and electric vehicles out there, that's going to be high voltage lines. Vehicles are made of conducting metal, so just assume that if there's an exposed wire, that the whole vehicle is energized. If a vehicle crashes into a power pole, again, also assume that that vehicle is energized until proven otherwise. Vehicles can catch fire. Modern vehicles often have a fair bit of magnesium in the engine and the engine block, and that burns very well. As just a regular responder in an ambulance, you shouldn't be trying to put those fires out. We do have fire extinguishers on the ambulance. You might consider using those in a patient compartment if it's appropriately ventilated, but don't try and put out vehicle fires yourself. They can go pretty explodey pretty quick. If you are using a fire extinguisher in a passenger compartment, just realize that it's going to displace breathable air, and so use it judiciously. So when a vehicle is in an accident, be sure that somebody's turned off the engine, put it in park. Sometimes people forget to do that when they're in a crash, so make sure that thing's not rolling away. After that, we should chock the wheel so that it doesn't inadvertently roll away, and better yet, use these step chocks right either behind the wheels or in front of them too. When a vehicle is on its side, you need some purposely or specially designed struts to support that vehicle. This is a whole class in itself to learn to use these things. Vehicles on their roofs, you get trickier still. Oftentimes the struts will work too, but sometimes it's easiest to use just chunks of wood to build cribbing boxes. As far as getting access to the patient, oftentimes a door just needs to be unlocked or a window opened, and then you can gain access. Maybe not disentanglement, but at least get in there to that patient. So the general rule is try before you pry. So then more complex access uses prying tools, hydraulic spreaders, cutters, that kind of stuff. If we do need to break glass in a vehicle, do that as far away from the passengers as possible, because it usually shoots lots of little pieces of glass everywhere. Those little pieces of glass should be not terribly sharp, as it should be safety glass, but we still don't need glass all over our patients. If we are on a scene and rescue is extricating, often we'll just remove like a whole side of the vehicle basically, and perhaps the roof. And if you can do that, it makes it a lot easier to get patients out of vehicles. If they're entangled in the front end, like the dash is impinging on their legs or feet, then we'll often use hydraulic rams to spread that off of there. Steering columns we don't cut, it just doesn't work out, and may cause airbags to go off. And that's the end.